I'm Colin Flynn. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, message of hope. As prayers pour into Minnesota, the Catholic school targeted in a deadly attack earlier this week announced its plans for the immediate future. 20 years later, a look at the destruction and rebuilding of New Orleans on the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. The arrival in Taiwan, 2 U.S. senators hit the road, causing a stern response from China. Plus, a life of faith and service. The Augustinian province bestows its highest honor on Pope Leo. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
And thank you for being with us. Our story tonight, top story, as a nation mourns and prays following the deadly shooting at a school mass in Minneapolis. We are now learning more about the young victims. The parents of 10-year-old Harper Moisky say that she was a bright and joyful child whose kindness and spirit touched everyone who knew her. And the father of 8-year-old Fletcher Merkel said his son will be remembered as loving any sport that he was allowed to play. He also says that Fletcher loved to fish and cook. Officials at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis say that the school will remain closed for the time being. Officials also say that the community is still coming to grips with the, quote, unfathomable incident. Plans may be released early next week on what comes next for the school year. Officials add, quote, we will navigate this together and we will rebuild our future filled with hope. We're joined now by Vincent Francois. His daughter Chloe is a student at the Annunciation Catholic School, and she was in the church when this terrible shooting took place. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us. And first of all, how is your daughter Chloe doing?
She's doing better. She's doing better than the adult, I will tell you. And every day is a better day. Today we asked her out of 10. She's at 5 right now, but it was 1 right after. So we are happy with every progress.
Yeah, it'll be little by little for years to come, I'm sure, just because of what she witnessed and the other students did. Did she tell you much about what she saw or what it was like in those moments?
I don't know. She did what she has been trained for, which is running or fighting or barricading yourself. And she did the 2 of them. Basically, smell of smoke, a little pow, and then all of a sudden a bit everybody realized. And what she called the military run, which is like the crawling run, and she had to. The friend were maybe, try to hide, and she wanted to go. And so she has to step on some friend a bit, and she feels terrible about that. But she did what she was trained to. But the thing they saw, it's unbelievable. And we learn, and as we go.
And what age is your daughter Chloe, by the way, Vincent?
So she is 11, turning on 12. I tell you, the maturity of those kids are all now, they're like acting like they're 18. Wow. They're like so pragmatic. They are so, matter of fact. They can talk about everything. Their friends who are, in the hospital, even the kids who passed away, was pretty good. Like, for me, it has been a lot of crying. Just terrible.
Yeah, Vincent, I'm so sorry. As a father, when you have to deal with this, I can't imagine you're thinking, how do I explain this to my child? I mean, how do you help her make sense of how evil visited such a sacred place on that day?
I think for us is we're pretty vulnerable. When we don't know, we tell her we don't know. When there's no explanation, we tell her we can't explain. You cannot explain everything. I know we're all in search of explanation in our life. Everything gotta be, But basically, she makes us promise that we will not lie to her. We will not hide anything from her. And that's what we're doing. I think it's coming back to the basic here is be truthful, be genuine with her, and hoping for the best. I think I'm not a psychologist. I've never been into this territory. I don't know what I'm doing. And so what I do is being myself being what I think is right, and be honest with her, and same with my wife, and be open up and not be not the question need to be answered. And if we don't have the answer, it's okay to say, you know what, we don't know. And the the shooter, was just a person, and there's no explanation.
And that's beautiful, that honesty and that openness as a father should be, a father and a mother. And Vincent, we know we've been told that the school is closed until further notice. Have they informed you and parents on what's going to happen next?
No, I mean, it's even though it felt like a long time, but it's only 3 days, and so like today we just got this with kids are picking up their phone. I'm laughing because next we need to pick up those lunchbox, which we are laughing about how some science we kind of it's gonna be interesting because we're gonna come up with some interesting food at the end. They all have their lunchbox. The school is doing a great job. I mean, the principal, the teacher, they're just amazing. I, it's gonna have to be a decision made altogether. I'm a partisan of the quicker we can do it, but we're not gonna force kids.
Vincent, and I just want to thank you for your
Yeah.
time, and we wish all the best as well to your daughter, Chloe.
Thank you so much.
Now, in November of 2017, a small rural church in Texas became the scene of the deadliest church shooting in U.S. history. During a Sunday service, a gunman armed with a military-style rifle walked into the First Baptist Church of Sutherland Springs. As families gathered together, holding Bibles and praying to the Lord, a man named Devin Patrick Kelly opened fire. 26 people were killed and many more were injured. Among the dead were several children, including the pastor's own 14-year-old daughter. That pastor, Frank Pomeroy, joins us now. Frank, it's good to see you again. I know we have met before when I went to visit you there in Sutherland Springs to report soon after this terrible incident. So I want to get your reaction, Frank, when you first heard about this terrible tragedy that happened at the Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis. What were your thoughts?
I have to say, when I first read about it and then heard about it, you can't help but it just breaks your heart. Your heart falls out from under you to think again someone was shooting through the walls indiscriminately, knowing where these children were. And it just reminds us of the mental illness and sickness and evil that's in this world. My heart just goes out to these folks, knowing what they have to deal with coming up.
And I know, Frank, that, as we mentioned, you lost your beautiful 14-year-old daughter, Belle. And I remember you telling me, after it, just how raw it still was for a long time. What would you say to the parents in this tragedy who have lost their children?
Well, I will say that my oldest daughter now, when she heard about this shooting, called me and told me how it just pulled the rug out from under her even. So the pain is always going to be there. And unfortunately, mental illness and evil are realism in this world. And the Bible tells us that it will rain on the good and the bad. And this is a truism in this world. And what we have to do is, though, even we're in the midst of a storm, remember to look through it, looking up, and see the brightness of the sky, the sun, the S-U-N and the S-O-N, and just know that in the midst of our turmoil, God will get you through this. Cling to your faith and your prayer and hold to something greater than yourselves, which is the Spirit of God. That's what will eventually get you through.
That's a great metaphor, Pastor Pomeroy, that it's like being in the middle of a dark and dangerous storm. And sometimes for people, they can feel like it's hard to see the sun in that. But I know that for your community there at First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, you were able to rebuild that community of faith. How did you do it, and how is the community holding up even today after that tragedy?
The church is doing wonderfully, and the community has come together and doing well. And I think it comes down to we trusted and put our faith in a real and solid faith in God prior to the event, so that when the event transpired, we already was clinging to what could bring ashes from roses from the ashes, if you will. And we made a decision. We could choose to, like other shootings, be filled with hate and ugliness and division, or as we sat in the foyer of a temporary building and we discussed it and said, we need to choose what God would choose, which is grace, mercy, and hope. And that's what we chose because we knew we had a community that was looking to us and would follow that lead. And the great thing is, you mentioned in your question how I led this, but God led that. And He led it through all those of us that chose to put our faith and our eyes on Him. And one step at a time, one day at a time, God brought us up. And there's so many, as you know, Colin, there is so many wonderful blessings that we can look back on after the ugliness.
Pastor, finally, to ask you, I've heard people say on television, don't call for prayers at this time. These children were praying when they were shot in that church to mark the beginning of the school year. Don't call for prayers. What would your reaction be to that?
When I read that the mayor of Minnesota had said that, of the town there said that, my heart broke. People don't understand that prayer is a communication between our heart and the Lord, and that's what can bring solace and healing and bringing people together in arms to uplift and hold one another to keep a focus on the Lord. It's, if you have a man that's injured, when two friends get on each side can carry him through. That's what prayer is. And that's what we need to remind people or teach people, is prayer is an opportunity for us to uphold our brothers and sisters and love one another through these tragedies, such as the young man you just had on prior to me. This is an opportunity for him to go back to those who lost loved ones and say, we're here for you and with you, and we're not going to forsake you. We're going to pray together and let the Lord lead us through this trial and tragedy.
Hey, Pastor Frank Pomeroy, it was great talking to you again, and the best of luck to you and everyone there in Sutherland Springs.
Thank you, my friend. It was good talking to you as well.
Thank you. We are also learning more about the gunman in Minneapolis. Police officials, say that Robin Westman, a biological male born as Robert Westman, was filled with hate and admired serial killers. The 23-year-old also expressed anti-Catholic and anti-Semitic thoughts in a manifesto. Westman died at the scene of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. For more, we turn to Dr. Camille Gibson. She is a professor in the College of Juvenile Justice at Prairie View A&M, and she has also served as the executive director of the Texas Juvenile Crime Prevention Center for 5 years. Dr. Gibson, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Colin, for having me.
First of all, when we look at this horrific case and what we know of this individual so far, from what you have seen, were there signs you believe that officials, the teachers or parents should have seen that we've missed?
Hindsight, as they say, is 20/20. It's not uncommon for people to observe unusual behaviors, but we don't want to let our minds get there that it could become something this horrific. But with each of these cases, the lesson for us is to pay attention, to be vigilant, and to express concern to law enforcement.
It's a difficult one, Doctor, isn't it? Because, and apologies for cutting across you, but what you said at the beginning, that hindsight is everything. It's easy for us now when we have access to this individual's diaries and we can see his mental state very clearly there on the paper from what he was writing. We see the videos that he released just before this horrific crime. But parents will be wondering, how far should we go? Should we be checking our child's diary? Should we be looking at their browser search history if we maybe have concerns that they too are troubled in some way?
It's interesting because this person is 23. So we're talking about an adult. But if we see things that are concerning, if the person is expressing thoughts about persecution and difficulty and anything violent, and then you add to it access to guns where the person could actually do something, then it's important to say something to law enforcement if we think it's at that level, or to get mental health intervention. So it's a tough call. And, you know, in many cases, we can't blame folks for not having that clear 2020 hindsight. But if you have a combination of someone who's upset, having interpersonal difficulties, feeling persecuted, there's some history of mental illness, maybe not an official diagnosis, but we know something is not right, and then access to weapons, that's not a good combination. And so it's important to seek assistance in those cases. And yes, these sorts of things are difficult to predict. A number of folks have challenges, but it doesn't wind up this way.
And you mentioned during one of your answers there as well that sometimes it can be difficult to get the help that people need, you know, engaging with the juvenile system or mental health charities or facilities. So if a parent does have a gut concern that their child could be pained in some way or suffering, going through something, and they've tried talking to them, maybe that hasn't worked, how far should they push and try and get the help from officials?
Law enforcement in many parts of the country have been helpful in connecting people to resources, including mental health resources. When I worked as a therapist, it wasn't uncommon for parents to call the police because they didn't know who else to turn to. And police were able to contact them with community mental health resources. So if you have trouble accessing mental health, law enforcement tends to be very helpful in assisting people to make those connections. And I know it's hard to call law enforcement, but they don't automatically arrest. They do help families to make connection with resources at times.
That's so important, that message of hope and of strength and community and talking about it. So important. So Dr. Camille Gibson, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Paul.
In other news, it's been 10 days since President Trump signed an executive order sending National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. to beef up the city's fight against violent crime. And lawmakers have mixed reviews.
The Pentagon should be focusing on what's going on with Ukraine. They should be focused on what's going on in Gaza. They should be focused on China, focused on Russia, focused on all the things going on around the world. They shouldn't be focused on Washington, D.C. That's a police, for the police to do. And they're going to be doing that. I mean, what is there, 2.5 weeks left and then the 30 days is up? Trump doesn't have the votes in Congress to extend it anyway.
Republican Senator John Kennedy argues that major cities are worse off than they were a few years ago and that they need federal help.
If you measure it in terms of crime and violence and education, poverty, family formation, it's easiest, not easy, but it's easiest of the problems I've just mentioned to deal with crime. And it's working. We've sent in law enforcement officials to Washington. Crime, violence is down.
House Republicans are expected to address soon President Trump's call for a comprehensive crime bill. Well, we have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly, including survivors remember Hurricane Katrina, the impact of the deadly storm 20 years later, and Israel declares Gaza's largest city a combat zone. Join us after the break. The 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina brings up painful memories for those who survived the natural disaster. And it puts a spotlight on the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is facing cuts under the Trump administration. The president wants states to take over many of those responsibilities.
Just standing here, you know, it brings back some of the memories I prefer to forget.
20 years later, the damage from Hurricane Katrina remains evident. 2 shuttered hospitals stand as eyesores in New Orleans, and doctors describe the impact.
People talk about Katrina like it was a day, like it was 2 days, like it was 3 days. It took us 10 years to reestablish health care in a meaningful way for this community. 10 years.
On this day in 2005, Hurricane Katrina spurred floods that devastated New Orleans. Nearly 1,400 people died along the Gulf Coast.
One of the things that was the biggest lesson that was learned after Katrina was how do you coordinate an entire federal government to support state and local jurisdictions if you have something catastrophic like this?
The response to the natural disaster left a lot of people frustrated. Many victims were stranded.
And that level of coordination right now, I don't think is there either, because you have a FEMA administrator who, one, doesn't have emergency management experience, which was also a lesson from Hurricane Katrina.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says FEMA is still handling 16 different disasters dating back years. She questions how long cases should be left open.
The president believes that we should be in a disaster response portfolio and footprint, but the long-term mitigation should not be something that the federal government is continuing to be involved in to the extent that it has been in the past.
Several FEMA employees were put on leave after they signed a letter warning Congress about the recent changes. And in June, President Trump announced plans to phase out FEMA after hurricane season. Now, the controversy at the Centers for Disease Control is spreading to Capitol Hill. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, a doctor and chair of the Senate Health Committee, called on the Department of Health and Human Services to indefinitely postpone its Vaccine Advisory Committee meeting next month. The agenda set for September the 18th is set to include discussions for vaccines for COVID-19, hepatitis B, measles, mumps, rubella, and others. 2 Republican senators are in Taipei for a series of high-level meetings with senior Taiwan leaders, and they are also speaking out against the threat from China.
The Chinese Communist Party continues to threaten, to pressure, and attempt to isolate Taiwan. These actions are unacceptable.
Deb Fisher of Nebraska is joined by Senator Roger Wicker of Mississippi, and they're both calling for China to end its efforts to threaten and isolate Taiwan. Beijing is responding. It criticizes the U.S. Senator's visit, saying that it objects to any contact between officials from the United States and Taiwan, and the visit sends a wrong signal. Beijing claims the island nation as its own. The Israeli military suspends the daily breaks in fighting that allowed humanitarian aid into Gaza City, calling it a dangerous combat zone, aimed the start of a major military operation. This comes as Israeli officials say they recovered the body of one hostage and the remains of another. They also say the military offensive will bring home more hostages, and Gaza's health ministry says that the war between Israel and Hamas has claimed 63,000 lives, but Israel disputes that number. The United States approves an $825 million arms sale to Ukraine to boost its defensive capabilities. The sale includes 3,500 extended-range cruise missiles and GPS navigation kits. They are being paid for by Denmark, the Netherlands and Norway, with unspecified financial assistance from the Pentagon. This comes as the White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoy held talks with Ukrainian officials in New York City earlier today. Ukrainian officials say that they're ready for direct negotiations with Russia. Well, up next in EWTN News Nightly, on Pilgrims' Feet. Visitors to Rome for the Jubilee of Hope include a group from a prestigious site in Spain. Welcome back. Pope Leo XIV has expressed his thanks after receiving an award dedicated to St. Augustine.
On behalf of the province of St. Thomas of Villanova, the larger Augustine community, and the whole faith-filled believers, we say thank you for accepting this honor.
The Augustinian province say the Medal of St. Augustine is the highest honor it can bestow, and the province praised the Holy Father's life of faith and service and his focus on church unity. Now, the Eternal City is a significant pilgrimage site all year round, but especially now aimed at Jubilee of Hope. And it is even drawing residents from another prestigious destination. EWTN Vatican journalist Benedict Siegrin has more.
Santiago de Compostela is one of the world's most renowned pilgrimage destinations. But on the occasion of the Jubilee of Hope, it was the faithful of that city who themselves became pilgrims to the heart of the church in Rome. Vamos a la Amid hymns and prayers, some 50 pilgrims passed through the holy door of St. Peter's Basilica. The delegation was granted the permission to celebrate Holy Mass in the chapel of the choir, a private space within the basilica which houses the relics of St. John Chrysostom and is normally reserved for special liturgies.
For us, it is important to celebrate the Eucharist in St. Peter's, because doing so with the Diocese of Santiago de Compostela, which is our sister diocese and also presides over us in the Archdiocese of Galicia, is a moment of communion. And to do so, especially in St. Peter's Basilica, where the Pope is especially present, means also working and praying for that communion among the churches that the Pope presides over, because he presides in charity.
But the pilgrimage was more than just an expression of communion with Rome and the successor of Peter. For the Archbishop of Santiago de Compostela, making the pilgrimage to Rome together also meant carrying the hopes of the faithful while offering the opportunity to listen to their stories and struggles.
The pilgrims come forward and share how they are, their situations, the pains they bear, their fragilities. But they also share their hopes, their dreams, for their families, for their parish communities, in one way or another. It is also an opportunity to live together in fraternity, to make the pilgrimage, to walk together. Along the way, the heart of each person is revealed. We must have the eyes of faith to recognize Christ in our brother or sister, to whom we also are called to bring Christ, and at the same time know that Christ is waiting for us in that brother who also asks to be heard.
The pilgrims were also able to attend the Wednesday general audience with Pope Leo XIV. Speaking to EWTN News, they explained how the pilgrimage has deeply impacted their personal lives and shared their hopes of returning to Santiago de Compostela with renewed faith.
It was an opportunity to rethink our attitudes and reflect on our lives and how we have acted in moments that may have been conflicting, harsh, or difficult. And this leads me to want to renew and reconsider my life and my personal attitudes.
It brings me happiness, joy, beauty, and I don't know, a wonderful sense of peace.
It is something that certainly reminds us that we are always called to begin a new life, to discover Christ as that wide open door, and also to realize that what matters is not so much the door itself, but what lies beyond it, what awaits us beyond, that invitation to the full life that the Lord always has prepared for us.
In Rome, Benedictia de Grian, EWTN News Nightly.
A beautiful pilgrimage there in the Eternal City. Well, that is it for tonight. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Colin Flynn. Thank you for watching. Good night and God bless.